The upgrading work was made possible by a New South Wales government grant of $64,000. The program included painting, installation of air conditioning, new furniture, furnishings and drapes, modern birthing chairs, as well as provision of areas for mothers to bathe babies and prepare formulas. Facilities have also been upgraded to improve operational functioning of the intensive care nursery area. The chairman of the Belmont Hospital Board, Mr Graham Mullane, says the number of births at Belmont is increasing and are now double the number at Royal Newcastle Hospital's maternity ward. Mr Mullane said people are obviously using the obstetric services available at Belmont, and so the Hospital Board welcomes the state government allocation of funds for the refurbishment.
Well, the real idea was that so many we've spoken to, some had met them 30, 40 years ago, and I said, look, wouldn't it be good if we could just get together and, well, to some they said we haven't met. And everybody I spoke to, the whole issue of them have arrived. There's not one missed out. Russell Troy, he's 87 years of age, and of course he doesn't get about much these days, but we got cards from him back in 1927 when he was putting music on the air when there was no broadcasting up here. And he was so happy to come along. His son brought him today and he stopped and he's still here.
A lot of the equipment here, of course, has been handmade.
Most of it was handmade. There's some of the equipment, but the radio set, there's two of them there, they were all handmade. And most of the parts, there's some parts there that have been commercial, but other parts they've had to wind, big transformers, they've thousands of turns, they might take them a couple of days to wind. They'd wind so much of it and then stop, and the next day when they got home from work they'd wind some more. But virtually, other than their valves and buying the loudspeaker, they used to make themselves.
Bill, you're a little bit hopeful that perhaps people will see this and maybe have old pieces of equipment lying around in garages and forgotten corners that might somehow make its way back to you and your friends.
Well, as a matter of fact, this is what I would really like. They call it junk. In my opinion, it's really valuable possessions of the past. It's really memories. And well, I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to have what we could call a Newcastle or a Hunter Valley Museum, which will become part of a heritage for the area.
This car is one of 40 of the last generation of suburban carriages before production of the Tangara begins. In a bid to show the State Rail Authority that Ganninan's is the best company to build the new Sydney suburban trains, the company has incorporated a number of features of the Tangara into these cars. One of the less obvious features to the observer, but one the passenger will appreciate, is the chopper electronic control, which will provide smooth acceleration and improved braking. This system also cuts down on electricity consumption because it regenerates its own power. Other features include an improved air conditioning system and passenger windows. Sales Manager Warren Princehorn.
The Tangara contract is in competition to two other companies. We believe that Ganninan has offered advanced technology for Tangara. We believe that Ganninan experience in building this type of car is in the leading company in Australia, and therefore we think we've got a good chance with Tangara.
After the miserably wet weather of the last few days, the Belmont Golf Course was graced with sunshine for the first 18 holes of the tournament. The Belmont Tournament, which is the biggest amateur stroke play championship in Australia, has attracted some of the best amateurs from both here and around the world. Setting the pace today was Brad Lincoln from the Carnarvon Club in Sydney. He finished on top of the leaders board with a 3-under round of 69. One stroke behind was 18-year-old Peter Baker, a Walker Cup player from England who likes the local conditions and was in the top 3 all day. Also on 70 are State Junior Team player David Ecob and Belmont veteran Tony Jones. Finishing on 71 were Billy Guy from South Australia, Queensland Junior Matthew King, Belmont Stephen Northey, Mark Nash from Bonnie Doon and Charlie Fox from Fox Hills.
70? Oh, that sticks all right today.
Situation. John Pine's got to keep Ken Brightbill out. If the Americans sneak another ball away here, it's going to make it very, very difficult for the Australians to take them back. Rodney Combs at the
Camp drafting isn't the most exciting of rodeo events, but from a cowboy's point of view, it is one of the most demanding and at times frustrating. It's the nuts and bolts of horsework, the rider and his charge combining their skills and energy to cut out a beast from the herd and force it around and through a set of gates disguised as trees. Today at Murrurundi, as part of the district's 3-day polo cross charity rodeo, it was the turn of the youngsters of the area to test their skills. While the old hands watched on, they threw themselves into the job. Some found the going hard, the beasts unpredictable and uncooperative, but for at least one young cowpoke, Brett Holtz of Jerry's Plains, there was success. This workout earning him 87 points and the winner's sash. No doubt a competitor to watch in the future, and certainly a deft hand to be had around any herd.
Well, that looked like
For reigning Australian hardcourt champion Peter Doohan, yesterday's match against local opponent Brian Williams was another feather in his cap. Doohan, the Newcastle-born tennis star, has spent the last few weeks playing in New Zealand, and his technique was in top form for the County of Northumberland Championships, played at District Park yesterday. Although Williams put up a hard fight, taking his share of points from Doohan, the competition proved too strong. Doohan won the match 6-1, 6-3. In the women's final, defending champion 16-year-old Tracy Mowell met Gina Fogarty in what turned out to be a close and hard-fought match. Mowell won the first set 6-4, lost the second 4-6, and then fought for 6-3 in the deciding set to retain her title. In golf, it was another case of close competition in the Harvey Norman Lake Macquarie Amateur Open at Belmont. 20-year-old Peter O'Malley from Bathurst was runner-up in last year's Australian Amateur Championships, and yesterday finished 4 under the card in first position. Mark Nash from Sydney came in second in a surprising result after he looked a certain winner on Sunday's course record of 65. Nash struggled yesterday to slip from 8 under to just 2 better than the card. And it wasn't defending champion Ray Pickersday, homing in at equal third place with David Smith on 1 over, after a score of 9, putting 3 into the water on the 9th hole.
Blandford Park is destined to be a name linked in the future with quality bloodstock and first-class breeding facilities. The stud occupies 1,500 hectares of prime upper hunter land either side of the New England Highway between Blandford and Murrurundi, which is arguably some of the best limestone horse breeding country in Australia. It's fast becoming a sprawling complex, home to more than 230 top quality thoroughbred mares, 150 of which are managed on behalf of outside clients. Already there are 5 stallions, including the proven sire, Twig Moss, currently the 3rd leading sire of winners in Australia. By the time the next breeding season gets underway in September, there'll be another 8 stallions, making Blandford Park the biggest breeding operation in the land. But more than just having the finest bloodlines on offer, studmaster John Kelso is also out to make Blandford Park a showpiece. Already there are magnificent quarters for his staff, and some 39 people are employed on the property. The old Pentlands homestead, built in the 1920s, is being lavishly restored and landscaped with a pool, spa and tennis court to cater to the needs of the world's top breeders, owners and trainers who'll be able to fly in using a 1400 metre airstrip which will soon be constructed. Then there's this magnificent weanling barn with 32 individual boxes, veterinary facilities and weanling education yards. Yearlings will also be trained and kept here. Not far from it, these pens where young mares will be given every opportunity to cycle and breed, and also where foals will be weaned. To ensure the safety of the stock, yards and laneways are springing up everywhere, and to give them the best chance in life, more than $500,000 has been earmarked for the installation of a series of major new dams, which will allow the irrigation of most of the already highly improved paddocks. It's an ambitious project which should be completed within the next 12 months, and which is being funded by revenue raised by the floating of Blandford Park Limited, Australia's first horse breeding operation to become a public company on the stock exchange.
I think we showed a profit in excess of $3 million last year. We now have assets of over $17 million, and with, I think, somewhere about 350 shareholders, some of them naturally quite major shareholders. The company has gone remarkably well in a short time.
John Kelso is a proud, innovative and knowledgeable studmaster. His involvement in the horse industry goes back 4 generations, and he's obviously very confident of its future. It's the biggest industry in Australia. Its value locally is huge, even bigger than mining.
The TAB, of course, has been a tremendous benefactor to racing, but the breeding industry, because of that, has become stronger, and now we see our horses, such as Strawberry Road, competing overseas with success, and I think that as more of our horses go overseas to race, that will tend to popularise our bloodstock overseas, and you'll see more overseas people buying our horses.
Apart from the improvements to the water harvesting and reticulation network here on Blandford Park and the arrival of the new sires, the other major improvements will come in the way of fencing. Already there's around 130 kilometres of this type of special fencing. That's about half the job done. At a cost of around $7 a metre, this alone represents an investment of around $2 million. A lot of money to most people, but not when you're talking about the thoroughbred industry in Australia, and more particularly about one man's pursuit of a lifelong dream.
John Kelso envisages Blandford Park providing the top professional stud operation in Australia.
In Bulahdelah today, parents and children turned out to protest against the closure of the town's only preschool. When the preschool closes next week, more than 30 youngsters will have to go without.
Join Ray Deneen and John Church for all the news tonight at 6.
It's the first time Upper Hunter residents have been able to study locally for an associate diploma in art. The man behind the move is college art lecturer Peter Singleton, who will use the Muswellbrook Town Hall to teach about 20 students. Peter says there is plenty of demand for art studies in the area.
Well, there's a lot of interest in art, and there are very strong art groups in the Upper Hunter, and that was one of the reasons why we felt that the service should be taken to them. I judged the Scone Art Prize last year, and there was a tremendous amount of interest shown there in the sort of courses which we offer.
While the college gears up for the start of the academic year, one course still looking for students is the Associate Diploma in Computing Studies, which teaches computer programming. Course lecturer Ernie Jordan says the lack of interest is surprising, considering the increasing number of computer programming jobs available.
I think it's mainly that people are not aware of the huge demand that there is for computing people, and maybe are not aware of this particular type of course. They think in terms of computer science degrees, whereas this is a course for people who want to be computer programmers in a business world or an industrial world.
Today, Federal Transport Minister Peter Morris officially welcomed the new bulk carrier to Newcastle. He started the huge Courier coal loader, which by the time it's finished will have loaded the coal in just over 24 hours. Tonight, iron Newcastle sails for Japan and Korea, before returning to Western Australia to load iron ore for Newcastle and Port Kembla. This innovative triangular course makes the BHP fleet more competitive, as they carry a payload for 2/3 of the journey. Officials from BHP and the Japanese shipbuilding firm inspected the bridge, which features the latest in computer technology. Later, at a special luncheon, the ship's master, Captain Bill Lloyd, was presented with a plaque commemorating the ship's first visit to the city. BHP's chairman, Sir James
Overseas,
gave a progress
as a result of the implementation of the Crawford report, and with the...
He warned, however, that static freight rates and rising costs would mean the vessels would have to work hard to recover their massive capital investment.
Two significant factors that have affected the viability of the project for any future building would be the elimination of the investment allowance and the lower Australian dollar, which has meant that these ships we've built, of course, are now costing us a lot more in Australian dollars.
But for the present, we have a ship owned by an Australian company, crewed by Australians, about to take on the world in international shipping. The scene was rugged country just west of the Putty Road, about 40 kilometres southwest of Singleton. At noon today, the victim and a workmate were felling a tree when the trunk came down vertically before he could leap out of the way. Timber getters often work alone, so it was fortunate this man had a friend who could go for help. Singleton Ambulance called for the assistance of the rescue helicopter, and only the finest of flying by pilot Franklin Pira was able to land paramedic Lou McLeod at the scene.